And this was the list by executives, coaches, etc. Stafford at 1, Goff at 2, Prescott at 3, Purdy at 4, Jordan Love at 5. Noticeably absent was Jalen Hurts, not among the top 5 NFC, not NFL family, NFC quarterbacks. Again, if you like really good conversation, you're in the right place. Turn up your volume, relax for a while. We appreciate you watching. You could be watching any show. You're hanging here with us. We promise to make it worth your while if we've done our work to get this show into a great position. James, let me start with you, big dog. Do you have an issue with Jalen Hurts, a quarterback that's been to a Super Bowl, being left off the list of top 5 quarterbacks in the NFC?
Well, I actually want to host the show today. So, because I got a bone to pick with you two over here. So I want you two to go first on this right here. Because I want to be able to come back at y'all with some stuff. So let's get it going. Dave, I want to start with you on this.
I'm ready.
Jalen Hurts left off the top 5.
Yes.
How do you feel about that? Is this right?
Okay. Host James. All right, yeah, forget what's going on over here.
By the way, I had no idea this was happening, so I'm in for a treat.
In general, these summer lists are what bother me, and the way that everything gets reshifted with recency bias. Like, the most recent thing that happened almost feels like the only thing that happened. So I have beef with a lot of this list for that very reason. I think Jared Goff is a little bit too high here. I think you could argue Brock Purdy, based on what he did last year, deserves to be a little bit higher. Don't get mad at me over there in your Packer green. Jordan Love, phenomenal. I think he's a hell of a quarterback. I wonder if we've seen enough of a sample size to have him as high. And so in that regard, yes, I have a problem with Jalen Hurts' placement on this because, yeah, he had a down season, but this is still a guy that's been all-pro. This is still a guy that's played lights out in a Super Bowl. I do have a problem with him just completely dropping off the list. At the same time, I don't feel angry or offended by it because I do think Jalen Hurts has some very big questions in his game that need to get answered. But I will say, sorry, not to cut you off, Acho.
Go ahead, sir.
For instance, Jalen Hurts' body of work to this point is better than Jordan Love's. I love where Jordan Love is heading. But things like that are what make me pause and say, right now, today, are we ready to say that? So that's where I'm at.
So hold on.
Go ahead, sir.
Before you go.
He wasn't kidding, by the way.
Before you go. We sat up here on this show last week.
Yes, we did.
And we argued.
Yep.
And I said that there's nothing that Jalen Hurts can do better than Dak Prescott.
Except run his own read.
Except win and run his own read. That was y'all, right? Dak Prescott is on this list and probably should be a little higher if you ask me.
Are you taking a victory lap right now?
Jalen Hurts is not on this list.
Not at all.
It's valid.
It is.
And from what I heard in the meetings, you don't have a problem with it, but you argue with me that he's better than Dak. Break that down.
Yes, sir. Two things. And this, I think, is maybe my most inarguable take. It's my most inarguable
I'm ready to listen
for it.
I don't have an issue with it. I believe that Jalen Hurts is better than Dak. I think that Jalen Hurts is better than Dak because when push comes to shove, Jalen Hurts, he wins in the playoffs. Dak Prescott does not. But the reason I don't have an issue with this list is very, 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 very simple. If you look at the quarterbacks that have won a Super Bowl, and the objective of playing the quarterback position is to win a Super Bowl, in the last 15 years, I want you to look at the prototype of statistic of quarterback that's won a Super Bowl. On average, 30 passing touchdowns, James Jones, 1 rushing touchdown, and on average, the winning quarterback who wins the Super Bowl has 174 rushing yards in a season. So if you're looking for a quarterback to win you a Super Bowl, on average, over a 15-year sample size, you're looking for 30 passing touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown a season, and 174 rushing yards a season. What Jalen Hurts does is incredible. He has 20 passing touchdowns. Obviously, he has those 13 rushing touchdowns, and he rushes for over 700 yards. But what we've realized is it just doesn't necessarily win you a Super Bowl. So if you are creating your list of quarterbacks that you prefer based upon what it takes, historically speaking, to win Super Bowls, then I would want to find quarterbacks that fit the criteria of winning Super Bowls. That is Matthew Stafford. That is Dak Prescott. That isn't a limited 2-year sample size Brock Purdy. That is Jared Goff. That isn't a very limited sample size Jordan Love. It's not to say that what Jalen Hurts does isn't fantastic, but if you are creating your list of best quarterbacks based upon who's the quarterback that looks most like Super Bowl champions look, then Jalen Hurts is not on that list. Until quarterbacks come along who look like Jalen and play like Jalen and win Super Bowls. Obviously, I don't mean look by skin color. I mean look by style of play. Until the Michael Vick had come along and won a Super Bowl, or the Cam Newton had come along and won a Super Bowl, or the Robert Griffin had come along and won a Super Bowl, or the Tim Tebow had come along and won a Super Bowl, or the Daniel Jones had come along and won a Super Bowl, or the Lamar Jackson had come along and won a Super Bowl, until we see a quarterback play a similar style of ball. What I mean by that is a quarterback who rushes for over 700 yards annually and has 8 to 10 rushing touchdowns annually. Until we see that happen, I am not mad at the person who says, I don't want that quarterback. I'm not mad at them. I might not agree with them, but James, I'm not mad at that person.
So I truly believe, because I think this is highway robbery with Jalen Hurts not being on this list. And y'all know I'm a Packer through and through in the way I feel about Jordan Love. Brock Purdy's a really good player, but this is an all-pro quarterback that has been to a Super Bowl and helped his team get to a Super Bowl. So from that standpoint, I think it's highway robbery, and that's why I don't think they looked into it like you looked into it.
Okay.
I think they turned the tape on, and they said at the quarterback spot, throwing this football, getting this ball out of their hand, making everybody around them better, these are the 5 quarterbacks that have been doing that. That's what I think this list is saying. So that's why I asked you, with them turning the tape on and watching this, I believe they left Jalen Hurts off the list for that reason. And that's why I stood up here and said that Dak Prescott is a better quarterback than Jalen Hurts when you take out the read option and you take out winning, even though Dak wins too, but he ain't been to a Super Bowl. Because he does not look like those dudes standing in the pocket throwing this ball when you're playing the quarterback spot.
Does that matter to y'all? And viewer at home, I'll ask you the same question, obviously rhetorically for you all. But does it matter that a quarterback doesn't necessarily look like another quarterback if he still has the same yield, if he still has the same, like your receiver, you led the league in touchdowns, so of anybody on national television, you can answer the question best. Does it matter that Jalen doesn't look like Matthew Stafford to you?
Well, it matters only for the receiver. If you play a different position, a running back, O-line, defense, it don't matter what your quarterback look like. For a receiver, you want the Matthew Staffords, you want the Jared Goffs, you want the Dak Prescotts that's not really running nowhere, that's standing in the pocket, taking a shot, delivering the football, throwing the ball. That's what he wants to do. You don't want, as crazy as it may say, as a receiver, you're not necessarily saying, I'd rather go from a Jared Goff to a Lamar Jackson or to a Jalen Hurts, because you know part of their game, a lot of it is running the ball, which means you're going to limit your opportunities. But if you're trying to win, as you know as a defender, it's harder to defend guys like Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson because of that.
It's a good question. Dave, I was thinking about this. If someone were to ask me, Acho, who are the 5 hardest NFC quarterbacks to game plan? Kyler would probably be 1. Jalen would be 2.
Jalen would be,
Like for me as a defender, because now as a defender, when you're thinking about defending, you could have everybody covered. But the problem when you're facing a mobile quarterback is if you turn your back for a second, he could take off and run. Defensively, scheming-wise, James, you know this, Dave, I'm sure you know this as well, you can't call certain things. Like cover 5, which is man-to-man on the outside, corners are guarding the receivers, a safety's guarding a tight end, a linebacker's guarding another running back. You can't necessarily call cover 5 on like 3rd and 6 or less, because if the linebacker turns his back to go guard Saquon Barkley, next thing you know, the quarterback's going to turn and run. So now on 3rd and 6 or less, you got to call cover 2, and you got to make sure all eyes are on the quarterback. You quite literally have to change the way you call your football game predicated upon a quarterback's ability to run. So, Dave, if I were making the list based upon most difficult to game plan, it would look different. But the list is top quarterback.
I will tell you why this bothers me. And I mean, I love watching Jalen Hurts play. I love watching mobile quarterbacks. I mean, Kyler and Lamar Jackson are 2 of the most electrifying players. Lamar Jackson is an interesting comparison because as he's gotten older and more experienced, Lamar Jackson, not to say that he wasn't always that good, but Lamar Jackson got even better in the pocket. I mean, like Lamar Jackson's best work on his way to his 2nd MVP was stuff he did as a passer. And the running almost felt like an afterthought. Jalen Hurts, at this point in his career, running and the ability to run is still such a big part of what makes him valuable, like y'all just said. But look at last year. He gets a little dinged up. I refuse to believe that his knee was not bothering him for most of last year. His yards per carry dropped below 4 yards per attempt, which when you talk about a quarterback, a lot of your runs are scrambles. Like you just said, you're catching the defense not looking at you. Less than 4 yards per attempt.
That's not good.
That's not going to cut it for a quarterback. And on top of that, The guy is on a big-time contract now. He's turning 26 soon. I think he's under contract till he's 31 years old. How long can Jalen Hurts carry the ball 150, 160? I think he carried the ball 175 times last year. How long can you get away with doing that? A, at the risk of getting him hurt, and B, hurting your investment, all of that good type of stuff. And that's what I want to see from Jalen Hurts. I think running should always be part of his repertoire, but I think it's just a reality of the NFL is the more expensive that you get, the more that has to take a backseat, and he's got to find a way to be even more lethal from the pocket.
I have a question for y'all. Am I in the wrong? Am I in the wrong to say, and I've always said this, which has gotten me in trouble, particularly gotten me in trouble societally, racially, because of the correlation. I'm not a huge running quarterback fan if I want to win a Super Bowl. Like, me, Emmanuel Acho, playing Madden, love running quarterbacks. Me, Emmanuel Acho, as a defender, man, I appreciate the running quarterbacks because of how stressful they made my life. Terrell Pryor may have been the hardest game plan I ever had to game plan because I'm worried about tackling him in the open field. But when I think about the game as an analyst, James, you at home, Dave, when I think about the game as an analyst, I don't like running QBs because historically speaking, running QBs, and again, the sample size, it was much more limited in the 80s and then limited in the 90s, but after 2000, we got a little bit different. Running QBs, we just haven't seen them succeed at the highest level. Call a coincidence. Maybe Cam Newton could have beaten the Broncos. Call a coincidence. Maybe Jalen Hurts was about to beat the Chiefs, but remember, Cam Newton there was a fumble there and that he didn't want to dive on, and Jalen Hurts, there was a fumble return for 6. Call a coincidence. But Dave, am I in the wrong? James, am I in the wrong to say I would rather the semi-mobile pocket passer over the quarterback that's going to run for 700 yards?
See, that's for me. That's where I kind of draw the line because what kind of running quarterback we talking about?
Yeah,
because Russell Wilson ran the ball and won a Super Bowl.
Correct.
Aaron Rodgers in his prime made a living from choosing when to run, and he wasn't running for 700 yards. Patrick Mahomes, they won the Super Bowl because of the first downs he picked up with his legs.
Biggest play of the game was a 40-yard
still need these mobile quarterbacks,
but there's a difference.
But the main thing is how they play from the pocket. I think these running quarterbacks, when you start talking about a Jalen Hurts, if they're going off this list about strictly just quarterback play, he doesn't play the quarterback position the way those 5 quarterbacks play the quarterback position from the pocket. That's what they have to be going off of. Because if you're going off of winning, if you're going off of what he does outside the pocket, if you're going off of anything else, then like I said before, it's highway robbery that he's not on this list. So they are strictly going off of pocket quarterbacks and how they make everybody around them better.
Let me push, and I hear what you're saying, but let me push back on you this way because I think this is interesting too. And quarterbacks are such better athletes now than they were even like 15 years ago. So if you take out your Patrick Mahomes, take out your Brock Purdy, even throw in Dak, like guys who are athletic but not running quarterbacks. But what about the pure statue guys? Like Jared Goff is a great example because whatever limitations a running quarterback might have, I would rather have the fallback plan of he can get me out of this with his feet. Whereas Jared Goff's not getting you out of a play if it's off structure. It's not happening.
In this day and age, now let's talk about the difference. Again, nuanced conversation we're having here on Speak. There's a difference between a mobile quarterback and a running quarterback. A big difference.
There is a big difference.
Like a mobile quarterback can get you out of a jam. A mobile quarterback, if you are in man-to-man, everybody's back is turned, a mobile quarterback can pick up 22 yards. A running quarterback can pick up 52 yards and take it to the crib. But a mobile quarterback can get you out of a jam. I would rather, Dave, the mobile quarterback.
Yes.
Because what I think it is a lot of the curse of the gifted. Why is Giannis and why were Shaq such bad free throw shooters? They were such bad free throw shooters because they never had to be great free throw shooters. Not in Little League, not in AAU, not in college for Shaquille O'Neal, and definitely not in the league because they're so good at everything else, you never had to develop that ability. When you think about some of these running quarterbacks, if you will, you're so good at running, you never had to develop the ability of throwing from the pocket. Not in high school, not in YMCA or SVAA, definitely not in college. Like, you can win a Heisman. We've seen several Heisman winners. Just off nature of they got the ability to get up out the pocket and go get him one. Terrell Pryor was a dominant college quarterback, and in the NFL, eventually he moved to receiver. So that's where I am, James, with it is like, I would rather, I love what you said, though. So long as your running ability doesn't inhibit your pocket passing, you're going to be all right. You're going to be all right.
And I think that's the main thing. Go ahead, Dave.
Can I put you on the spot?
Talk to me.
You said it's highway robbery that Jalen's not on this list. So who are you taking off?
I got to take off, it's either Purdy or Love. Number 1, I will move Dak to 2. I will put Goff at 3. I feel like Jordan Love has more upside than Purdy, so I would put Jordan Love at 4, and I would put Jalen Hurts at 5.
But see, if you're going off upside, then it's a completely different conversation.
Yeah.
Because now I think you got to put Kyler in the conversation. Like, if we're having a conversation of upside, like, to me...
Yeah, but that goes back to what we've argued about with Trevor Lawrence, where...
When does upside expire?
I mean, Kyler Murray's been in the league for 5 years now.
And to me, too, though, I just think it's a respect factor, man. At one point, you got to say, he might not be able to throw from the pocket like Jordan Love. But the man has been to a Super Bowl. Yeah. The man is an all-pro. The man, like we always talk about, wins year after year. Like, that's what he does. So at one point, you got to put the resume in there, too, from what he's done in this league.
To me, do y'all go resume? And Colvin, let me know how much time we have before I got to go to commercial break. Do y'all go resume or do you all go eye test? Because I was thinking about this. Joy said something last week. If you have a great team as a quarterback and you're competent, you will go far. No more, no less. Like, we've seen Rex Grossman go to a Super Bowl. We've seen Blake Bortles go to an AFC Championship game. We've seen Blake Bortles win a Super Bowl. We've seen Jimmy Garoppolo go to a Super Bowl. If you have a great team, you will go far. So, for me, I'm looking at to me, the reason I love Brock Purdy is because of the tape. Yeah. Not just because, like, because he went to a Super Bowl. It's because of the tape. The reason I like Jordan Love, it's because of the tape. The reason I don't love Kyler, it's because of the tape. The reason I think that Jalen Hurts, albeit is one of the best winners in the National Football League, but the reason I think that he's limited if you start talking about ranking quarterbacks is because of the tape. No doubt. I like Tua because of the tape. So for me, I'm looking at the tape. Dave, look like you got something to say.
No, it's got to be both. I think you have to include resume. You have to include what a guy has accomplished. But if the way they're playing recently doesn't back that up, then I don't care that Jalen Hurts was a second-team All-Pro in 2022 if the way he's been playing doesn't back it up, which I agree with what you just said. Honestly, I think Jalen, Brock, and Jordan Love are kind of interchangeable right now where I'm like, well, Jalen had this down year. Jordan hasn't done it enough yet. And Brock Purdy...
what's your knock?
Not his fault, but he does have this incredible supporting cast to I'd say this to you all the time. If we're going playground style and you're drafting these guys not knowing who they're throwing to,
I'm not taking.
I don't think I'm taking Brock Purdy ahead of any of these guys.
But another thing too, though, from this list and what I can tell is they don't account for what they do with their legs.
No,
this is strictly how you play in the quarterback position, throwing the ball, whether that's throwing the ball inside of the pocket, outside of the pocket. And I think that's the only way you leave Jalen Hurts off this list because he cannot throw with those dudes, in my humble opinion. Inside the pocket, outside the pocket, he cannot throw it. And the reason why I can say that, because we have not seen him do that consistently. We've seen those dudes do that.
But I think it's a fair calculation. Like, if you want to not disqualify the running ability, but until the running ability is so substantial that it proves to win Super Bowls, if somebody wants to say, Acho, stop talking to me about a quarterback's ability to run, because Matthew Stafford, Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady, Nick Foles, who else has won in the last 10 years? Peyton Manning, like, them cats didn't rush for more than 300 yards in a season.
Yeah, but the only reason why that sucks, too, is because even with Jalen Hurts running, he's been further than Dak Prescott. He's been further than Jalen Hurts. He's been an all-pro over Brock Purdy and all that. That's what I'm saying. So with how he's playing the quarterback position, he's still having a lot of success, is what I'm saying. So it's hard to bump him out of that just because he don't look like they look in the pocket.
That's very fair.
Subscribe here to get the latest from Speak, and go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.